survey. Mandy and I are really pleased to share this data and these findings with you today, but also in any other fora as well. So please do reach out if you'd like to hear more about the survey after today. So Mandy and I both work at the Parenting Research Centre. For those of you who don't know much about the Parenting Research Centre, we've been around for over 20 years, previously known as the Victorian Parenting Centre, but we just kept growing. But we're a research and development organisation dedicated to making sure that children thrive through their parents and their carers having access to the best available evidence-based parenting support. And we do that in a range of ways. One of those is to conduct new research. One of our flagship research projects is this Parenting Today in Victoria survey project. And I'm going to hand over to Mandy in a second, and she'll give you a bit more information about how the survey looks and how we capture information from parents. But before we do that, just to add to Sylvia's acknowledgement of country with my own, on behalf of Mandy as well, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the various lands and waters that you're all joining from today. I'm sitting on the lands of the Wadwurrung people, which is down near Geelong in Victoria. And I know Mandy's sitting on the lands of the Wurundjeri people in Melbourne. And we would like to pay respects to elders past and present of the various communities that are represented online, and also pay respect to any Aboriginal people who might be joining us today. So a little bit about the Parenting Today in Victoria survey. We've been running this survey since 2016. It's a snapshot survey that's run every 3 years, with fabulous support from the Victorian Government Department of Families, Fairness and Housing. So they've funded every wave of this survey study, since its inception in 2016. And it's not a longitudinal study, it's a repeated cross-sectional survey. So every 3 years we have a different set of parents. And the idea is that we're capturing a contemporary snapshot at each time about what's going on for parents in that year. And it allows us to do a bit of a comparison over time of trends and patterns and changes in the parenting experience. So it's a series of large-scale surveys. We're currently preparing for our 4th survey in early 2025. And in the meantime, and over the past 9 years, we've been taking a deep dive into some of the aspects of the data that we've had from the first 3 waves of the survey. And today's presentation is going to focus largely on the findings related to parent wellbeing, to parent help seeking, and to the uptake of parenting programs, focused mainly on the most recent data, 2022 data, but also perhaps drawing on some of the previous wave data as well for comparison. I do want to point out that there's a lot of effort that goes into these surveys every 3 years. So first of all, to the parents of Victoria who've participated in the surveys, each wave, it's a big commitment. They're large-scale surveys and they take a long time to complete. So we're eternally grateful to the parents who persist and complete all of the survey each time. I'd also like to thank the Department of Education. I think it's just the Department of Education now in Victoria. I need to catch up on that. But in the past, we've had funding for this survey from the Department of Education and Training in Victoria. Currently, our funding agreement sits with the Department of Families, Fairness and Housing. But as I said, the Victorian Government have been very generous in funding us in each wave of the survey so far, and in the 2025 survey. And I also want to acknowledge the incredible efforts of the Parenting Research Centre team who are involved in the Parenting Today in Victoria survey. And there's a large number of us. Mandy is the project manager for the Parenting Today in Victoria survey and does a stellar job and is really across all aspects of data collection, data analysis, and knowledge translation. So really, she's leading the team and doing a fantastic job there. And we've had an incredible number of people at the Parenting Research Centre involved over the years, including Jan Matthews, including our previous CEO, Warren Cann, who's still involved in analysis and interpretation, and a whole raft of other researchers. And I also want to acknowledge that we have a project board who support us in decision making and shaping up the survey and interpreting findings. So a big shout out to them as well. So with that said, I will hand over to the wonderful Mandy Kienhuis, who's going to take us through a bit of a journey, the background to the survey, the methodology, and some really interesting findings.
Thanks, Kath, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So as Kath said, I'll start with a little bit about the methodology. So I'll just take us through a few details of the methodology and the sample. I could go on for days. I could tell you much more, but given the time that we have today, I'll spare you the details. I'm going to be sharing a QR code at the end that has a link to a lot of the resources that you'll find on our website, including the technical report that delves much deeper into the methodology and also our findings. So I'll share that link later. So just a little bit of detail about our methodology. So we use random dial telephone survey conducted by Ipsos, and that's using CATI or computer-assisted telephone interviewing, which some of you may be familiar with. So as you can see on the slide there, a very large number of calls need to be made to get to our final target sample of 2,600 parents. So Ipsos needed to make over 100,000 calls to get that sample. And there, in 2022, there were 133 questions in the survey, and it took on average 33 minutes to complete. And that's similar to other waves of the survey as well. So in 2022, we obtained a sample of 2,602 parents with 43% males. To be eligible for the survey, respondents needed to be a parent of a child between birth and 18 years. And when completing the survey, if parents had more than one child, they were asked to focus on the child with the most recent birthday. So there were some questions where they were asked to focus on a specific child when responding. And surveys were also conducted in addition to English, in some other community languages as well. I won't read all the details on this slide, except to say that the sample approached representativeness according to Australian Bureau of Statistics data, and to improve that representativeness, we weighted on educational level. The average age of the focus child was 8 years, and 53% were boys. All right, so now to our results. So as Kath said, we're focusing on a subset of our findings in this presentation today. And our findings suggest that most parents are faring well, that they have access to support from family and friends, and open to the idea of accessing professional support if they need it. Take you through some of the high-level findings. So 84% are confident in their parenting. 90% say parenting is rewarding. 51% say parenting is demanding. We asked parents about some of their concerns about their child's behaviour. 46% report their child's sleep to be a concern. And worryingly, almost half of parents, 45%, are experiencing at least moderate current psychological distress on the Kessler 6, and 7% report very high distress. And what we've found is that we've seen a trend or a pattern showing an increase across waves in parent distress. So this figure, the different coloured columns are different waves of the survey, 2016, 19 and 22. And the clusters of columns represent low distress, moderate distress and serious distress. So you can see from that figure that we've seen a decrease in low distress across waves, and an increase in moderate and serious distress. So this doesn't seem to be just a result of COVID and lockdowns and those things that might explain an increase in distress if we only saw it in 2022. This pattern also emerges when we look at the differences between 2016 and 2019. We also asked parents a lot of questions about their well-being and self-care, things like shame, guilt, self-compassion. So some of these findings might not surprise you, but they are of concern. So 16% say they struggle with feelings of guilt or shame about parenting. 37% are hard on themselves for not being the kind of parent they really want to be. 56% say they forgive themselves when they make mistakes as a parent, but that's 44% who say they don't. 40% regularly do things to relax and re-energize, and that's gone down from 55% in 2019. So using a narrower definition of complex needs or disability, a definition that we used for data that we prepared for the NDIS submission last year. So this definition is, it includes parents of children with sensory impairments or learning difficulties and those with autism spectrum disorder. So 19% parents reported their child had a disability according to this definition. We've also done some analysis looking at a broader definition of complex needs, which includes physical health or medical conditions, behavioural and emotional difficulties, as well as what's included in this narrower definition. So using this narrow, using the broader definition, using the narrower definition of disability, 19% of parents report their child has a disability. So on this next slide, I've got some findings using that definition of disability. So we've looked at the experience of parents of children with disability compared to parents of children without. And the pattern of findings that we see here is similar to when we use the broader complex needs definition as well. So parents of children with disability, they report more challenges, including poorer physical health and poorer mental health, lower confidence about their parenting. They say that parenting is more demanding and more frustrating. They're more likely to worry, be hard on themselves, and struggle with feelings of guilt or shame about parenting, less likely to forgive themselves. They're also less likely to regularly do things to relax and re-energize, more likely to report child behaviour problems, including child sleep. And we also asked some questions about, school or education issues or concerns. So they also reported higher rates of homework-related stress and lower confidence in helping their child do well in school. So now I'm moving away from parents of children with disability and going back to the whole sample again. So the good news is that 8 in 10 parents say they have someone they can turn to for parenting advice. And 76% say they turn to Family First for parenting advice. However, this does highlight that there are some parents who are missing out on support. Importantly, most parents are reporting positive interactions with educators. So the majority, 89%, are comfortable talking to educators about their child. 84% say they feel welcome at their child's school or childcare centre. And 71% are satisfied with communications with their child's educator. So this really suggests an opportunity for educators, it really highlights the importance of educators in offering, information about parenting support during their incidental conversations that they have. In 2022, for the first time, we added some new questions to explore parents' child mental health literacy, so their awareness of identifying mental health problems and where to go for support if needed. So most parents say they're confident in knowing if their child was developing a mental health problem, and also most say they know where to go um, to get professional help with their child's behavioural or emotional problems. However, that still leaves about 1 in 4 who say they aren't confident in knowing their child is developing a mental health problem or knowing where to go. So this suggests a gap that needs to be filled. Outside of asking parents about family support, parents were asked what sources they had used when they needed information or advice about raising their children, and this was framed as over the previous 12 months. So outside of family, the most highly endorsed sources of parenting information were online at 85%, and closely followed by other parents or friends at 84%. Educators and other health professionals and GPs are also high up on the list. So 50% of educators, 50% of other health professionals. And that for 50% for educators, I forget exactly what the figure was, but in 2019, I think it was up in the 70s, about 72% or thereabouts. And we think that decline is probably due to the reduced interaction in the previous 12 months due to school absences due to COVID and home learning. So parents who had indicated that they'd accessed help in person from a DP or another type of health professional were asked to respond to 2 items about their interactions with those professionals. 74% said they were satisfied with the help offered, and 7% said they felt judged, blamed, or criticised when seeking help from professionals. So on the earlier slide, we saw that 85% of parents had accessed information online in 2022. So we've seen an increasing trend, small, but something to note, across waves of the survey. So in 2016, it was 79%, and in 2019, it was 83%. And not on the slide, but just something I wanted to mention also is just looking at one source of online parenting information. We also have a question in the survey about whether parents have accessed the raisingchildren.net website, and 35% said they had used it in 2022, and that had doubled, almost doubled since the previous survey. So it was 18% in 2019. So that was really good news. So going beyond simply asking whether parents went online for parenting information, for the first time in 2022, we surveyed parents in greater detail about online help seeking. So asking questions about the use of different formats of online information provision. So parents who said they had accessed online parenting information in the previous 12 months were asked to indicate by responding yes or no, whether they'd used each of these sources of online information that are listed in this table. You can see on the slide there that the most commonly accessed online information were child health websites and parenting information websites, about 2/3 of parents, and then followed also by Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, podcasts, and other things down the list. So parents who said they'd accessed information online, they were also asked to identify factors influencing their choice of online information. Again, based on this list, they were asked to respond yes or no. As you can see in the slide, the factors most commonly influencing parents' choice was ease of access, easy to understand, and also that it was provided by a properly qualified professional and provided by a credible organisation. So in the 12 months leading up to the 2022 survey, more parents attended online parenting programs compared to in-person programs. So 1 in 8 said they'd attended an in-person program, whereas 1 in 5 said they'd attended an online program. So while this might reflect COVID restrictions at that time, which impacted in-person interactions, it's worth tracking this into the future, as our other findings, do show that convenience is an important influence on parent help seeking preferences. Majority of parents say they find parenting programs helpful, which is great news. About half say they find the program extremely helpful or very helpful. Only 2% of parents said that the parenting program they attended was not at all helpful. Parents were slightly more likely to report that they'd completed an online program compared to an in-person program. However, we know that studies show that attrition rates from universally provided online parenting programs can be very high, suggesting that parent reports of attendance and completion in our survey might be overinflated. They might be influenced by social desirability bias, so that's something to keep in mind. For those parents who had partners, they were slightly more likely to attend an in-person parenting program with their partners compared to those who attended online. For those who had attended an online parenting program were asked, did you do the program by yourself or with the help of a professional? About 2/3 said they completed it by themselves and 1/3 with the support of a professional. So those parents who did not participate in an in-person parenting program were asked about their awareness of programs available for them to access. So 3 in 5 said they were not aware of programs for them to access. Fathers were less likely to be aware compared to mothers, 34% compared to 46%. And parents of adolescents were less likely to be aware than parents of younger children. And that's shown in the figure there. So we can see at age 0 to 2, 49% were aware. Those with the older target child in the 13 to 18 age range, 34% were aware. Okay, so this slide is a little bit busy. I hope you can see the detail on that, but I'll take you through what these findings are about. So we looked at the characteristics of parents who attended in-person and online parenting programs. I think we could look even more deeply into these findings and analyse things in lots of different ways. But these slides that I'm about to show you make a helpful start in informing us about who attends. So, for example, mothers versus fathers. So this slide focuses on those who attended in-person programs. So those who are more likely to attend in-person programs were mothers, those with higher education, those with very young children, parents of children with complex needs, and particularly those with behavioural and emotional difficulties. There was no difference in attendance at in-person programs for metro or versus rural or regional, and for parents from disadvantaged compared to advantaged areas, or for parents from different income groups. This next slide is similar to the previous one, except it focuses on those who attended online programs. So with those who are more likely to attend online were mothers, higher education, higher income, those from metro and advantaged socioeconomic areas, and parents of children with learning difficulty, sensory and learning difficulties. Note, unlike for the in-person programs, we didn't see a difference between parents with children of different age groups and for some of the other complex needs groups. This slide focuses on those who attended in-person programs, looking at those who did and did not attend, and the percentages reported are for those who agree or strongly agree. So our results show an association between attendance at parenting programs and greater self-care, but also with greater levels of things like distress and feeling tired. So this slide focuses on in-person programs. Those who attended in-person programs were more likely to describe their diet as healthy, to say they get regular exercise, but they were also more likely to be hard on themselves and to report moderate distress, but not high levels of distress. They were also more likely to say that their work performance suffers because of personal and family commitments. This next slide is again similar to the previous one, but focusing on attendance at online parenting programs. So we see a similar pattern, but we're seeing some additional things here as well. So those who attended online programs, again, were more likely to describe their diet as healthy, to get regular exercise, but were more likely to say that tiredness gets in the way of being the parent they'd like to be, to report high levels of moderate distress, to say they're hard on themselves, that their work performance suffers because of personal and family commitments. And of note, different to what we saw with the in-person parenting programs, and also those who are more likely to attend, more likely to say they struggle with feelings of guilt or shame about parenting, and that they feel under time pressure. So all parents were asked to identify the features of a parenting program that would influence their decision to participate. And the top 6 answers, and it was fairly consistent across sort of the different groups, mothers versus fathers and so on. So the top 6 responses were these ones. So it was held at a convenient time of day and at a convenient location. It addresses personally relevant issues. It's been demonstrated to be effective, is easy to access, and is offered in my own language. Of note, the program being online was ranked higher at 80% compared to the importance of, a preference for it being delivered in person at 61%. So the most popular features, so it was largely consistent across the subgroups of parents that we looked at. However, some program features were ranked as more important by some subgroups compared to others. So for parents who had attended a parenting program in the previous 12 months, having a trained practitioner conduct the program was important. For parents from more disadvantaged geographic areas, they were less influenced by the program being conducted by trained practitioners, more influenced by the program being delivered or co-delivered by a parent. For parents in regional areas, the programs being offered in their own language was important as convenience in time and location. So that was one of the findings that stood out, actually. Parents of children aged 0 to 2 years, they were more influenced by the program being easy to access, addressing personally relevant issues, being professionally produced and presented, offering ongoing and post-program support, being delivered in person and delivered or co-delivered by a parent. That's a lot to take in here. I hope it's not too much detail. We also asked parents, how likely is it that you'll participate in a parenting program in future? 21% said they were extremely or very likely to participate, 41% somewhat likely, and 38% said not at all likely. Mothers reported a higher level of likelihood to participate compared to dads, so 25% versus 16, and also parents of younger children at a higher likelihood to be as well. So almost 2/3, 62%, parents had access to help in person from a GP or another health professional in person, and over a third said they'd accessed parenting information or advice remotely from a GP or another health professional. So of those parents who access parenting information or advice remotely, we asked them, compared to in-person services, how did you find these services in meeting your need? So compared to in-person services, remote services were perceived as just as good for about 40%, a little or much better by 21%, and a little or much worse by 39%. So those who said they had received advice remotely, but they said that it was a little or much worse, were asked, why didn't it meet your needs? So based on open parent responses to this question, a list of reasons was created, and the primary reasons given could be grouped into categories reflecting the professional wasn't able to assess me or my child properly, it was difficult to communicate, and it was challenging to build a relationship. So those who said that they felt it was a little or much better were asked, what did you like about it? And again, based on open responses, we've created some categories as shown in this table. So the primary reasons given could be grouped into categories around convenience and not needing to travel. Okay, so now moving on to some of the implications of the findings that we've shared so far. So our findings suggest that most parents are faring well and have access to support from family and friends, and are open to the idea of accessing support from professionals if they need it. However, many parents are reporting distress and challenges in parenting. So these findings highlight the importance of increasing access to parenting support, including reliable evidence-based online information and evidence-based parenting programs. One thing that we've focused on in some of our knowledge translation work is the findings related to parents of children with disabilities. So parents of children with disability are not faring as well as a group compared to other parents. So these findings emphasise the importance of parenting support for families of children with disability, including NDIS-funded parenting support. Our findings on parent attendance at parenting programs are important as they provide a baseline for future investigations into parent use of parenting programs. So repeating this survey and including the questions again at 3-year intervals provides a valuable opportunity to monitor changes in parent engagement in parenting programs over time. So monitoring these changes of interest to policymakers and program funders, to service providers and researchers, especially given the recent government investment in both online and in-person parenting programs. So these findings also provide insights into how policymakers and service providers can act now to increase parent participation in parenting programs. And some of these insights are summarised on the next couple of slides. So one thing that we noticed from our findings is that parenting programs they seem to be attracting parents who are self-critical and set overly high standards for themselves and their parenting, and who have moderate levels of distress. So this highlights the need for parenting programs to address parent wellbeing, including feelings of guilt and shame, and self-compassion. So online programs offer an opportunity for increasing engagement in parenting programs due to their convenience and accessibility. Online programs, especially asynchronous programs where parents can access information at a time that suits them, also allows for increased tailoring and personalisation of content compared to in-person programs. So there's emerging evidence, which many of you would be aware of, that online programs can be delivered at lower cost to service providers by service providers without loss in achievement in outcomes for parents. So importantly, online programs offer increased accessibility for parents, especially for underserved parents who may find it difficult to access in-person programs. So maybe fathers, those engaged in full-time work, parents of children with complex needs, those in remote and regional areas. Our findings about the language preference, parenting programs targeting specific language groups might be more efficient if delivered online, as they can reach a larger group who may be geographically dispersed. So this is especially likely for parents living in regional areas who may need to travel long distances to attend a parenting program delivered in their preferred language. So our findings offer potential solutions for increasing parent participation in parenting programs. So policymakers and service providers should consider the findings that we've got from parents about their preferences, including programs are held at a convenient time of day and a convenient location. Programs are offered in community languages, targeted to specific needs and are effective, are easy to access, professionally produced and presented. Trained practitioners deliver the program. However, parents as co-presenters should also be considered. And that the project is structured, but yet allows flexibility so that it can be tailored to the needs of individual parents to address personally relevant issues. I mean, these are things I'm sure that many of you have found through your experience working with parents, but it's great to have the data from our survey to back up and to get that information directly from parents themselves. So it seems that many parents are unaware of the availability of parenting support. So of those who said they hadn't attended a parenting program in the last 12 months, 3 in 5 said they were not aware of programs for them to access. This suggests that awareness raising efforts are required to ensure families most in need of support do know that there are options available to them. That's the end of the formal part of the presentation, and we'll go on to some Q&A in a moment, which Kath will take the lead on. But I just wanted to say, yeah, thanks for listening. I know that's a little bit to take in. If you'd like to learn more, you can find more on our Parenting Today website. So the QR code there will take you to that website. So there's lots of resources there. There's the technical report, which covers a lot of our methodology and findings in more detail than we'd have time to present today, as well as a set of briefing notes. So those 3 images down the bottom there are examples of ones that we've most recently completed and posted on our website. So these are the resources we prepare when we take a deeper look into areas beyond what we put in our technical report. So areas of interest and prepared for a general audience. A lot of the findings presented today from that, or are shared also in that participation in parenting programs briefing note. All right, so
Thanks.
yeah.